You know Pokemon Go?
I know Pokemon Go. Yeah.
It's like Pokemon Go, but research. People have to ask themselves, like, do I want to invest this much time and money into like studying the language, especially studying on a business level?
We are not LinkedIning this thing. We're talking about what's behind the scenes. I use OneNote.
Problem is that where you want to work in academia or industry,
Academia, there's no money in academia, though, right? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Scientist Podcast. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine, Bektur. He's a human computer interface engineer. He graduated from Tsukuba University and he's now working in Mercury in a department where he applies his human computer interface experience. In today's episode, we talk about what is human computer interface, what it takes to work in this field, job prospects, academia versus industry. So let's get into today's episode. But before that, please press the subscribe button, like, and write a comment, because that would help the channel a lot. So today we are with Bektur. Bektur is an old friend of mine. He's actually been one of the earliest episode of the podcast was with him, and during that time we were talking a little bit more about like the science, that you did and how it relates to the work that you're doing. But with this new direction that we're doing right now is we're actually talking about careers and things that we don't know about being involved in a career such as yours, which we'll talk in detail, not in detail, but up to a certain extent that everyone can understand. And this is not going to be like LinkedIn. This is what I try to emphasize. We are not LinkedIning this thing. We're talking about, the what's behind the scenes, what people don't like. So we're not putting you on blast. So we're not trying to get you fired or something. But let's hear from you. So what is it that you do?
Me, you mean in terms of career, right?
I mean, yeah. First of all, who's Bektur?
That's me. I do many things. My main work is probably like a scientist, but I'm also an engineer, media artist. I do art, music, photography, um, a lot of stuff really. A lot of volunteering, and a lot of like also paid gigs and academic work, all sort of stuff. Yeah.
And how about your career right now? First of all, does it relate to what you did at undergrad and postgrad, or no?
It's almost the same. So basically, me, I guess I graduated from my PhD about like 5 years ago or so. Or maybe it's been more than that. It's like
Maybe a bit more, yeah.
6 years ago, I guess.
We kind of graduated at the
2018,
same time.
2018 was
18.
7 years ago now.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's 7 years
7 years
ago. Yeah.
I graduated
Wow.
18 too, 19, no. 18,
Yeah.
yeah. 18
Yeah.
too. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. Really. That's a whole different world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so basically, I have a background in software engineering, then I did computer science for a master's and PhD. My main work is augmented reality research. So I work with audio, AR, VR, visualization, mobile development. I also did like software engine.
Put this in simple words because I don't understand what you just said.
It's basically, do you know Pokemon Go?
I know Pokemon Go.
It's like Pokemon Go, but research.
It's basically-
This is how I usually explain it.
It's Pokemon Go with research. So how does that go?
I've been working on accessibility research. It's like inclusive design, helping people with different disabilities to kind of like work with technology. So I guess in general, I would probably classify myself as a human computer interaction researcher, or in short, it's HCI. It's a field of computer science where I think it got started in late 80s, where personal computers were becoming more common. And researchers said that we need like a field that combines different directions in psychology, sociology, interface design, programming, and other disciplines to get them together to understand how we interact with computers, how they affect us, how we can build better interfaces, better interactions, and so on and so forth.
Right. So basically, you see, like nowadays, how there are new ways to interact with computers, like the Oculus, for example, or like what the Apple one was it called?
Vision Pro.
Vision Pro.
It's funny, people in short call it AVP, which is like a rifle from Counter Strike. Every time, like AVP, you bought an AVP, like oh,
What? No, I
like
did.
what? No, yeah.
Oh man. So this is basically the field that you're working in at the moment,
Kind of
or
like this. Like there's a lot of different interesting things happening. So as of now, I'm more focused on like different directions. But in general, it's yeah, it's pretty much this. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. What do you think about AVP? Like, for example, not
It's
the
a
weapon.
good choice in Counter
not,
Strike.
not not the weapon.
If you like camping. It's kind of interesting. I tried it. I unfortunately I don't have enough money to buy it. It's cost like a car. I think it's
It's
like $4,000, $3,000. It's pretty hefty
it's pretty hefty. Yeah, I
for
mean,
something you would use maybe like an hour a day, best case.
I remember when they kind of doing all this promotion, heavy promotion for it, is that you could use it instead of a TV in your living room. You can use it like in an airplane, for example, and basically you're going to be surrounded by this whole thing. And do you see it like like because you're somebody who actually develops this kind of technology or works with it at least, right? Do you see it applicable nowadays, or we still have some time for this thing to actually kind of
Well,
take
I
off?
think it's kind of like so there's a couple opinions on that. Like some people said that we're probably entering so-called AR winter, where it's like, all the investment cools down in this area.
Yeah.
But also, what's interesting is a lot of people call augmented reality as sort of like a tar pit ideas, where people try to think it's going to be a great idea. They try to get into that business, but turns out the investment cost is so high that you get stuck with it and you can't really execute it. It's kind of like a tar pit where animals get in, they can't get out, and they just get stuck in there and die.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think it's the device sounds pretty good. The use cases they're promoting are pretty well done. I know some people who worked on it, and like a lot of it's based on all the research that me and my colleagues have been doing. So yeah, I think it's as technology, it's pretty cool. But as a consumer device, I think it's gonna take some time. So
Right.
it's gonna be interesting to see in the next few years where the companies are gonna take, which directions they're going to take.
What is one thing that you would improve on this product that would you think would make it accessible to everyone?
Price.
Price?
Price. Yeah.
Really?
Mostly price.
A size, don't you think? For me, like, so some people, I know some people already bought it. Obviously there are a few, not as many, and price definitely has something to do with it. But if it's expensive and it's that big, people are probably not going to use it all the time, right?
I mean, it depends. There's like a lot of issues when you're trying to adopt. So the couple of problems, like when you're trying to adopt mixed reality headsets. First of all, there's also like social acceptance of it. For instance, famously, when Google Glass just came out, a lot of people like called Google Glass users like glass holes. 'Cause
Assholes?
glass holes. Yeah.
Glass holes,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, because people were like, I don't want to talk to a person who's basically recording me,
Oh,
Uh,
right, right.
because like it's being used in sort of like day-to-day like conversations and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now
and
Facebook has something. Meta glasses also.
yeah,
very
there's like
similar,
a bunch
right?
of products in that category, and they're becoming a little bit more acceptable, I guess, these days.
Yeah.
Another thing is like when you're using a helmet, for instance, you can't really see what's going on. So Apple tried to do, for instance, this feature with external screens that shows your face when you're using
Oh,
it.
right.
Another thing is like uh, no matter how good your display is, you're probably gonna look really strange to people.
Yeah.
Uh, and companies have been trying to address that with like lightweight designs, more fashionable designs, etc. But it's still kind of an issue. I feel like also Apple Vision Pro got pretty close with like in terms of design because it looks pretty fashionable, like it looks like skiing goggles.
Yes.
But still, there's kind of like a lot of work to be done, and a lot of technology-wise, there's like a lot of gaps that needs to be addressed for it to be actually usable on a day-to-day basis. And it's hard to explain people why do you need to use it instead of your phone, which is the biggest problem.
That's it. And going back a little bit, I think we we got carried a bit in the technology. Like for someone that is working in this field, what is like is everyone that you know that are kind of developing this technology, has everyone like kind of been working on this for a very long time? Like they don't just have bachelors, but they have like masters or PhDs in this field, or do some people just can get into this field and just basically learn on the way?
Yep. I mean, it depends on your role. If you're a developer, it's definitely easy. But if you want to work on a hardware side, like engineering, it's a bit tougher because, for instance, even for me, I don't, for instance, have background in physics, and it would be hard for me to work on like a new technologies that would involve, working on like microchips, working on optics. Optics is a very important part because you need to be able to work on lenses, uh, all this kind of work. Like for instance, a lot of like later generation displays have been how was it like employing the laser projection. Basically, there's like a laser being shot in your eye to give you a picture, and it's like one of the promising technologies in the future.
Can you repeat that? I think I might have missed something. What?
It's
All
basically
I heard was there's a laser being.
yeah. There's like I forgot the proper name, but for instance, like one of the display technologies right now is like to have a laser being shot directly in your eyes, and that would work.
I see. That should be safe too, right?
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah, there's like a lot of testing, so it's not so different from. I mean, the way your eye see is from the reflected light reaching your retina, so
Yeah.
it's pretty much the same, just a focus beam of light,
And that should take less space than and like a.
From what I saw, yeah, but I might be wrong. I recommend check it out because I'm not a physics or optics professional, so I don't really follow that field. But it's been really interesting just to see this kind of demos because my colleagues have been showing some examples.
I see. Okay, so I don't know, from the outside, this whole this whole industry just looks like a black box, to be honest. Just we see a product coming out, yay, nice, you know. We're happy with it. What do you think is the most important thing for you to be involved in this kind of work? If someone is interested in working in this kind of field, what should they start? What should they do?
I mean, that's kind of two different questions. Like, what is the most important thing for a person, and what should they do?
Well,
Uh, what's the most important thing? I guess is just to have passion and interest. A lot of this stuff is kind of passion projects. I mean, that's how Okio's headset started because it was just Palmer Lucky, just I think he's sitting in his garage and making the first headset. I mean, it wasn't the first. There's been like a bunch of similar ones, but he was like one of the commercially successful people who kind of figured it out. So it's to have passion, I guess. A lot of researchers I work with are always inspired by science fiction. So, for instance, it was same for me. I watched a lot of science fiction, so I was kind of blown away by the fact that we can make that technology real. So there's a bit of like,
man, Apple Watches, like this was science fiction, right? I think it
Yeah.
was first in Star Wars or something,
yeah,
right? And then now we actually have those kinds
yeah,
of things.
yeah. So it's kind of like technology inspired by science fiction inspired by technology. It's like art imitates life, life imitates art. What people should do? I mean, it depends. Like, you need to figure out what you want to do. Like, do you want to work on software? Do you want to work on hardware? Do you want to do some kind of interesting media art projects? Because there's a lot of like media artists also exploring that space. And based on that, I guess you can try to figure out what kind of like knowledge you need to get, like technology stack, what kind of tier you need to learn, or you can just try to do stuff. I mean, right now people have been using like ChatGPT and other models to like help you with coding, and it's doing a pretty good job.
Right. Talking about ChatGPT, I know a few friends of mine who are programmers or data scientists and stuff like that. And they said like ChatGPT kind of really helps their work, kind of takes it. So something that would take them a week to do can be done in a day. Does that apply to your job too, or not really?
Uh, Depends on the application, but in a lot of use cases, yes. So, for instance, if you want to quickly prototype something, large language models are pretty good at making code, but it depends on the platform. Also, if you have like a very general question and you don't really know specifics, you can just ask it, and it has no choice but to reply to you. So uh, it's pretty good. It also depends on what kind of service you're using. There's like different models, different options. There's like a whole plethora of things you can apply, and I'm kind of trying to actively adopt it in my workflow because that's the state of the art right now. So you can't really get away from it.
And company-wise, are there policies being enforced regarding the use of these large language models?
Well, I can't tell you much because I'm under NDA about my company. But in general, yeah, because one of the problems is like, for instance, model training. If you input your code into a model, like I think OpenAI has a corporate license where they promise that they won't train their model on your code. It's because it's a real danger. Like you can accidentally ask it to produce a whole chunk of like, classified, like well, not a document, but like a piece of code that is your intellectual property, and that would be a
That
big
would suck.
problem. Yeah,
No.
there's been cases about that. But in general, companies are trying to adopt it real quick. The problem is like people, although people are like, what do we need it for? It's hard to sort of like find a use case. It's a more of a scenario where it's like a tool looking for a problem or a solution looking for a problem, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I think that is the next big struggle. It's like, okay, we have the technology, but where do we use it, and do we really need to use it?
I mean, for the time being, these I think sky is the limit, kind of, right? Because it's really proving day in day out that it's capable of doing that you thought that it's not able to do. Um, and this is the thing that kind of scares me is because this is the technology that they're allowing us to use. So probably on the back end, what they have is actually a lot more advanced, right?
Probably yes. I mean, at least that's what they want to tell the investors. Uh, 'cause
Because if this is it,
yeah, it's in reality you don't really know. But there's like, I mean, the companies are so far being pretty responsible about it. There's like safety testing being done. I think just like last week, OpenAI released a new version of GPT 4.5.
yeah.
And in their safety report, they said this is one of the models that is very close to, I forgot what was the standard, was like a biochemical danger. So it's like it was one of the models that, if prompted right, it could uh, teach an amateur how to make a bioweapon. And they kind of noted that it's getting closer to that range where you really need to put strict restrictions. Otherwise, it's kind of like it becomes an actual real threat. Uh, I don't know how much of that is true, but I mean, it's
So
pretty
they
interesting.
restricted it, kind of thing, or did they?
I think so. There's like a lot of the systems they're employing. There's like multiple models that are also looking at your input and output and make sure that you don't, get something harmful. Yeah.
But again, that means that they're in control, though, right? Like they can
I mean, of course,
they
but you
control
can,
what you can do.
of course, but you can just run it on your own. You can, for instance, that's why DeepSeek actually had like a big impact because they released their model. Was pretty good, and you could just run it yourself and was completely uncensored. Uh, it could tell you some pretty harsh things if you ask it. There's like not a lot of alignment being done, and that's why people really liked it. They said, well, it's kind of like
No filter.
huh?
It doesn't have a filter kind of thing.
Technically, I mean, probably it does to some extent,
Yeah.
but people said it was way easier to work with it because it doesn't put any like restrictions if you run it on your own.
We started this by saying like, do companies have some regulations to deal with AIs and stuff? Uh, and you said like in your job, like you might use it in one way, shape, or form. Do you think at a certain point, so there are people are interested in careers, one for passion, like you said, right, and one for financial reasons because they want to get paid well, right? Let's say that they're interested in
Human computer interaction.
human computer interactions.
Yeah.
Is this a good side to a good career prospect for people who are, for example, interested in these futuristic technologies to be involved in?
I mean, it really depends. The problem is that where you want to work in academia or industry. In academia, of course, you can.
Academia, there's no money in academia, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, it depends how you define it. You can get a good research grant, but salary-wise,
But
of
then you
course,
have to spend it on the
industry is-
research.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In the industry, it's a bit difficult because there's way fewer research jobs out there. There's actually like few research opportunities,
Hmm.
partially because for a lot of companies, it's not clear what do you need research for because they usually have like a product or a service they're selling, and it's like, why do you need like an academic research lab to do this stuff? And uh, not every company can afford that because it's a lot of like investment without clear returns. For instance, there was like a famous case where Microsoft HoloLens, it's like a famous glasses that Microsoft did. Uh, was it was like one of the top tier displays, but the problem was that I think there was a report that they didn't recuperate any money that they spent on it. Like the investment was way bigger than the profits that they got out of it.
Oh.
And that's like a usual use case when you do your stuff with research. I'm pretty sure like ChatGPT is the same story. Like they're actively trying to find some kind of like profitable model because I'm pretty sure like running it and actually improving it and researching costs way more than what they're asking from you. So that is one thing. It's like finding a research specific job is probably difficult, but there's also transferable skills. For instance, usually with ACI background, people work in UI, UX design and research and design. So it's mostly like user studies, understanding what customers do, understanding like, for instance, how do you make sure that people are going to click on that button or not click? Like a lot of this work is being done. Another thing is probably kind of if you want to be a sort of like an all-around specialist who can run the whole project from the ground up, including the coding, design, and validation, etc. This is also the field that's probably like one of the closest to this whole experience because you need to work in all of these directions at the same time. So I think it's more about the question of transferable skills. But if you want to work directly in the industry, it's better to focus on a specific role, and that way it would be easier for you to find a
You
job.
become like an all-rounder kind of thing.
All-rounders are good, but they're more for a startup world. If you want to like start a company,
Uh-huh.
then usually I remember when I was starting in game development, I was told that the leader of a game development like team should be the person who can do everybody's job. But if that person just doesn't have enough time to do it, that's why they hire people. But they should have an understanding of what everyone's doing and should be able to replace them at their job because it's kind of like an all-around person who can do everything.
So you worked in game development also?
A little bit, yeah.
What game was that?
I don't think we have any published games. I was just kind of like, I joined a few projects when I was in school. I don't think they really made it anywhere. Also now a friend of mine is doing like a online multiplayer, sort of like a FPS about medieval sorcery. I can recommend that game. It's pretty cool. It's called Apocrypha, I think. I can send a link later.
Yeah, we'll
It's
post a
like
link
it's
in
an
the game.
early release game, but he has a whole team. It's like it's a serious business.
Oh.
Me myself, I also help in like mobile development projects. I'm not sure if I can talk about them, but it's been mostly just kind of like a work of passion for me, just because I just find the topic interesting.
So, if there is something that you would like to tell people who, so if there's like a concept that you think people think about people who develop these technologies that is completely wrong,
A concept.
a concept, some idea
Mhm.
that they think about the work that you're doing that is completely wrong.
Work am
Is
I
there
doing
something
is
like this
completely
or just
wrong.
not?
Let me think. So there's it's kind of like, I guess one of the problems is that most scientists are struggling is to kind of define why your work is unique, fundamental, or whether your work is important or not. It's like one of the most probably insulting questions for a scientist to ask, like, yeah, but why is it important to
Yeah.
work on it?
Yeah.
And it's yeah, probably it's like I think every kind of direction is important in their own way. So I think it's one of the wrong kind of like concept to think, okay, this work is useless, this work is useful. I think it's every knowledge is useful because you don't really know what kind of results you're going to get out of it. I mean, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but sometimes you get really serendipitous like discoveries when you don't like the place you least expect it from.
So this idea or the concept is that people don't understand or don't appreciate the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like I would probably urge people to be more open to different ideas and work and concepts, and not be as dismissive. Depending, of course, it depends on your goals and what you think. But a lot of the time, I remember a few years ago, I was back home and a friend of mine got into an argument with me. He told me, "Oh, I thought you were working on big things like ChatGPT, but you're just a scientist." And I was like, "Yeah, but ChatGPT was built on like
By scientists.
30 years of science, like deep learning and all this like small incremental improvements over like papers and mathematics and all this kind of stuff. It wasn't like just done over a day by somebody. It was done through like collective incremental work of like multiple teams, multiple laboratories, etc. So it's you know it's wrong to think that if your project is not big and exciting, then you're not doing anything useful. I think that's a really bad way of approaching things.
Okay, I have a question. And it looks like people back home's expectations of what you're doing, whatever you're doing, just doesn't seem enough or big enough for them because you're basically working in Japan, and that means that you're supposed to be a CEO or, or
I
something.
mean, in my case, probably not because a lot of my friends also worked abroad for a long time.
Uh-huh.
So back home, when I meet with my friends, they just find this fascinating that, you know, I can do this kind of stuff, but they're really aware of what I'm doing. And I think there's less of that attitude these days because a lot of people had experience of working abroad in big companies, big laboratories, etc.
I see. So, do you think working in Japan added to your career or
Removed.
or removed? Is it hindering your progress or because depending on the field, really, I think it's Japan could be either like helping you progress in your career or kind of not helping that much. Let's put it that way.
I mean, it's true for every country, I guess. It's like depending on where like your community succeeds or not.
Uh-huh.
In my field, probably it's a pretty good place to be.
Mm.
Here we have like one of some of the like famous scientists that people are citing all the time.
Mhm.
For instance, um, just off the top of my head, for instance, there is in human-computer interactions there is like a famous scientist, Jun Rikimoto,
Mhm.
who's I think he's still the director of Sony CSL. It's like a research division under Sony. Maybe not anymore. I'm not sure. He was also professor at Tokyo University, and he's like one of the people who wrote all the like exciting ideas and exciting papers. So some of my colleagues said that when you're doing research, you hit a so-called Rikimoto wall. When you come up with an idea, you start looking for it. Turns out that guy already came up with
Already
it like
came up
30
with it.
years ago, and you're like, not again. So there's like quite a few people like that in Japan and in community here. They're still active. You can work with them, and of course their students are also pretty good. So I think in that regard, Japan is it's a pretty good destination.
So you would recommend people interested in this field to come here and work in
At
this?
least for like a postdoc or like a visiting research, I think it's a good.
I'm talking about career-wise. I'm not talking about studying, because studying, yeah, I would understand that. Yeah, Japan has
Career-wise,
many researchers, many great researchers. Careers, I'm talking about
career-wise for
career-wise.
industry, it's a different story because a lot of like companies would require you to have a native knowledge of Japanese, and I think it's a whole like other big time investment that would be the size of doing another master's degree, for instance. So in that regard, people have to ask themselves like, do I want to invest this much time and money into like studying the language, especially studying on a business level, to be able to work here? So I think that is like one of the bigger, I guess, difficulties. Another thing is like startup environment. I think there's probably more active spaces involved, like San Francisco, for instance, where everybody goes to start a startup. Here we have a bit of that, but it's still again you have to struggle with a lot of like difficulties, like finding funding, etc. So I guess I would say in terms of academia, Japan is pretty good. In terms of industry, it really depends on what you want to do and where you want to work.
It's re- Sorry if I'm gonna push into this. It really depends on what you want to do. For example, if you're intending to work in a startup, then probably going to San Francisco might be a better idea than coming here, right?
Yeah, and then you can come to Japan and open your office in Japan. Also, that being said, Notion was started in Japan, I think, in Kyoto.
What?
Yeah, I think Notion, the product, the note-taking app,
Uh huh.
I think it was made in Kyoto, as far as I remember.
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Uh,
Is it a big is Notion a big thing? Like, I'm not really sure.
that's pretty big, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It's a note-taking app.
yeah.
Okay. I use OneNote. Why did you laugh like that? This is bullshit.
It's okay.
It's not really good, huh?
Now, whichever works for you. I mean,
What are the benefits of using Notion, for example?
man, these days I don't know, because they've been like changing the product a lot, but it's pretty good for like organized note taking. If you want to create your own database of knowledge, they also offer like self-hosting of your web pages, so you can easily share your note as a website and let people to look at it.
Oh,
But
that's
I mean, there's also Obsidian that's doing similar thing. I would say Obsidian is probably more exciting to use these days. Me personally, I'm also partial to just using like NVim, NeoVim with Obsidian or something like that. But it depends on your choice of note taking.
There is an app that I found recently, and it's called Milanote. Maybe if you heard of it.
No,
So this one is more for creative work. It's very organized in a way that you can just use it for
so it's
creating
like Notion.
projects.
That's Notion.
Is that Notion?
Yeah, I mean, no, the very similar interface. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
So they stole the idea, maybe.
I
don't
wouldn't
know.
really call stall, but a lot of websites have been copying Notion interface. Yeah, a
Oh,
lot of
really?
applications.
I see. So, talking about, for example, somebody who's in mid-career, right? So
Yeah.
earlier we talked about if somebody wants to do something. So then if they want to go into university,
You can just do stuff. That is my advice.
that you can just do stuff. Yeah, just do, which is honestly you said it as a joke, but it's actually true, right? Like you really just need to start doing and then see if it works or not.
Another popular meme is like, if you had 1,000 times more agency, what would you do?
What does that mean?
Well, for instance, if you had like 1,000 times more control over your actions and outcomes in your life, what would you do?
I don't know. What would you do?
Do
You do.
me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably do the same thing, but with more intensity, I guess.
That's one thing. By the way, I saw a video, I don't know, it was on YouTube or whatever, and they said like a very similar thing. Like they said, if you knew that you were 30 failures away from succeeding, how fast would you want to fail?
the, oh, that's a good question. Um, I guess at the same pace. I don't know. I
No,
wouldn't
I would
say.
say I would go with more intensity. I just want to go with like let's finish those fails
Mm,
as fast as possible so I can get to what I want, right?
maybe, but you don't know whether it's a favor or not.
I mean, and this is the thing. Like you never like so the whole idea, if you know you're winning here and in order to get here you need to fail like 30 times, then you just want to finish those 30 times as fast as possible, right? And because with each failure you learn something. Yeah. And that's the whole point, like failing very quick and proceeding to the next step might be a
Hmm.
good thing. So if you're interested in going to working with human computer interface and university, going to school, probably Japan is a good
Yeah, academia
idea.
is pretty good.
Academia
Yeah.
is pretty good in here. And let me
Job
just
placement afterwards is a bit tricky right now, so I wouldn't recommend to like directly look for a job in this area like right tomorrow. But doing going academia is pretty exciting.
yeah. But this is the whole thing, though. People go to academia, go to school in order to find jobs later, right? So it's kind of is a very tricky thing, and it's in every, literally in every kind of industry. Like being in school, or I don't know. I think undergrad might be terrible for some people. I did not enjoy undergrad, to be honest. But now looking at it, it was kind of fun. PhD also was kind of terrible, but it was fun terrible. Like you could learn, like you see yourself growing as a scientist, right? But then trying to look for a job, and this is the reason we're doing this, is that people start looking at jobs and they create these images about them by checking LinkedIn, for example, right? And they see people talking about their careers on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is basically a very polished, very reviewed image of what your career is or what your accomplishments are, right? You think so? Don't you think so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just like a storefront. It's just people putting up a front, really.
Yeah. So we do a lot of photography, right?
Yeah.
And rarely do you, especially if this is an important picture or like something that you want to post on a gallery, you
Yeah.
wouldn't just take a picture and post it over there, right?
In a gallery,
A gallery, like a show.
right?
If you're going to take a picture and post it on a gallery, then you'd
Yeah.
probably you're gonna take so many pictures and choose the best one, and then edit this one and make sure that it's one of the best ones, and then you post it, right?
I mean, probably yes. A lot of like street photography stuff, like a lot of good photos, is just like 1% of 99, and the rest is like bad shots. Absolutely.
Right.
So it's like,
And I think research is quite the same. Like
yeah,
you have a lot of ideas and only one of them works.
yeah.
Career, I think, is even kind of more so because you're really not only showing the good parts only on LinkedIn
Hmm.
and to even people that you don't know. Because this is the funny part is you would have these conversations with people. How's work? And everyone would be like, I don't talk to me about work right now. Then you would check LinkedIn and you would see their posts, and then, wow, like, and I'm not talking about a certain person, but this is like the general idea. Everyone is basically kind of like that, right?
I mean, I guess so, but
To a certain extent, I mean.
I mean, when Instagram just started, it used to be just posts about daily life, but at some point, because of influencers, the thing shifted, and it's now very well polished version of your life in there.
Yeah.
Um,
But Instagram, like you, the difference between Instagram and LinkedIn, for example, Instagram is just like, I think we have a general understanding that it's fake. Like, you see an Instagram post, you see whatever, like, there's, it's not, I wouldn't even say fake. I know we would say it's manufactured, right? Like, it's always manufactured.
mm.
However, when you're talking about LinkedIn, like, this is careers and this is people's careers, and you would think that 1 + 1 = 2, but there's a whole another formula underneath that is being, I
I
don't
mean,
know,
yeah, that is.
kind of cooked to get
What,
there.
what was that phrase? Comparison is a thief of joy.
That comparison is the killer of joy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, generally speaking, don't go to LinkedIn to get inspiration. To be honest, you could see what people are working on, but if you're a researcher, for example, go to ResearchGate. That's do you know ResearchGate? That's a good website. You see what people are publishing, what are they working on, and how are they collaborating on projects. Instagram is fake because every post you see is basically completely manufactured. And LinkedIn, people only post the best stuff that they have so that they they get better opportunities, right? Because if you keep posting in LinkedIn about your failures, then nobody's gonna probably
I
look
mean,
at you.
yeah, there's like that famous meme about like, here's what I learned about B2B SAS. I don't know if you saw that.
Uh huh.
There's like maybe last year there was like a guy on LinkedIn who wrote about like going through a very difficult divorce, and in the end it's like, here's what they taught me about B2B services. You know, people like,
What?
yeah, people have been like parodying that for a while, so it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Anyways, any last thoughts for the people watching the podcast or hearing the
Um,
podcast, listening to the podcast?
I guess you can just do stuff, follow your passion, and you know yourself best. Watch Ashtarp. I don't know what else.
Watch what?
Oh, there is like a famous VFX animator, Ashtarp, who's talking about like finding your career and following your passion, structuring your workflow. I kind of learned a lot about that from him. Also very inspirational. I mean, there's also like a bunch of other resources, but it's mostly like it's very important to have some kind of interest in your life and to just kind of like follow something that you're good at, you're interested at, and finding this sort of like intersection between things. And at some point, if you become very specialized, I think it can also become your career, and it's something that people would value you for, I guess.
Yeah, and there you have it. So thank you very much for listening, and we will see you in another episode.
Yep. Thank you.
Peace.